Vous l'allez voir, on la domine, mais sur les valeurs individuelles, individuellement, elle ne pouvait pas nous gagner. Et on a vraiment porté sur notre chance, qui était vraiment notre collectif, qui était vraiment...
So, in accordance with the higher instruction of the head of state, we have reinforced our health personnel in the airport.
The government has activated its control brigade to bar the way to the entry of COVID-19 cases through the transport hub, the same way the virus first came into the country.
We brought to the Minister of Transport, the governor of Littoral and Center region, who are the regional coordinator of our riposte plan. So this is to test all passengers who are disembarking in Cameroon.
The health screening procedures in place at airports and other ports of entry have been ramped up. It is now mandatory for every air passenger entering the country to run the test at the airport, whether they possess proof they have made the negative test within 72 hours of departure or not.
The respect for barrier measures in public places is gradually dwindling throughout the national territory. Unlike in the past months where there was a conscious effort to observe physical distancing and the wearing of face masks, many Cameroonians have shoved aside these practices that protect they and others from the virus. Beatrice Ngum reports that there are, however, a handful of persons who remain vigilant and adopt attitudes worth emulating.
It came like a wild wind, affected a life's closed borders and imposed a new way of life. People were obliged to respect anti-COVID barrier measures.
The situation is alarming, so it's always better to be on the safe side by protecting ourselves.
It is important to continue to observe them so that the disease decreases by us.
In the beginning, the face mask, washing of hands and the respect of physical distancing was a must. Today, the neglect of barrier measures is glaring on the streets. The few who stick to them have their reasons.
I wore the mask only today because I had to come to withdraw my passport and it's a requirement for that.
Yet, there are some who have remained faithful to barrier measures.
I usually wear the mask. When it means washing hands, even at home, we do wash our hands with soap.
1 meter when talking, especially when you go to public places like supermarket or a bank.
With the recent surge in the disease, making the respect of barrier measures an obligation for all and the non-respect of measures in public administrations and on streets punishable could be the means to halt the spike.
Abiding by the coronavirus preventive measures, such as the regular washing of hands, can also prevent individuals from catching a common cold or having a runny nose, which is one of the symptoms of the COVID-19. Medics say most patients consulting on a weekly basis have a common cold, which could be as a result of the recent climate change. Yoti Kalelisong reports on the causes and prevention of common cold and cough.
A chilly weather, and before long, the flu creeps in.
We are experiencing an extension of the rainy season characterized by an increased frequency of having what we refer to as a common cold or flu.
Climate change isn't the only factor at play.
It is generally caused by the body itself reacting to something that irritates the upper part of the airway, or an infection which is mostly due to viruses. This reaction as well can be an allergic reaction like dust or a particular smell.
Basic hygiene practice is the first preventive measure.
Adequately wash your hands, avoid touching your nose, streets, your eyes and the mouth. Avoid crowded places because persons who have these flu symptoms will transmit them through air droplets.
Keeping warm is another option.
You want to take the tea with some lemon in it. Those are things that help to reduce the secretions that come out from the noses and it makes you feel better.
Then you have medication.
There are drugs that work by reducing the swelling, others dry up the secretion, and others are against allergy.
And a caution.
There is no place for antibiotics in the treatment of catarrh initially.
Physicians insist to be consulted if a flu persists.
As announced in one of our top stories, the security situation in the southwest region is being assessed, and the education community reassured that the security in schools will be tightened. This was at a special security meeting in Kumba presided over by the minister delegates at the presidency in charge of defense, Joseph Beti-Asomo. As Albert Njiembondo reports, 3 of the 9 suspected to have slain the school pupils in Kumba have been neutralized.
The visit to the southwest region sounds like a wake-up call at the dawn of attacks from separatists on the school system in the northwest and southwest regions. Joseph Beti-Asomo is flanked by security chiefs of the military high command and intelligence services. Recent attacks in Kumba and Limbe are clear indications that separatists intend to jeopardize the success story of the back-to-school campaign registered this year. It was disclosed that 3 of the 9 assassins of the Kumba carnage have been neutralized. The manhunt for 6 others is well on course, and the minister indicated that tracking to destroy all Ambazonia camps in the bushes have also been activated. Before leaving Boya for Kumba, Joseph Beti-Asomo, while reiterating the encouragements of President Paul Biya to security and defense forces, also urged parents, teachers, students, and pupils to keep the school momentum alive and emphasize that efforts have been made to contain the wave of attacks on schools and protect people and property in the region.
The families of the deceased children in Kumba who are still in grief have been encouraged to keep the faith and to trust government to apprehend the killers. They received the visit of the defense boss, Joseph Beti-Asomo, today, who took the commitment to decamp all pockets of separatist fighters in the region. Kanga Williams Wasaluku reports.
Minister Joseph Beti-Asomo arrived Kumba this Monday at about 1:30 p.m. After an inspection of military honors, Minister Joseph Beti-Asomo immediately swung into action. His first contact was with the families of the victims of the Kumba massacre. The minister conveyed words of comfort from the head of state and assured them of government's determined effort to track down the perpetrators of the October 24 massacre.
This is a moment of great sorrow, I know. So it's not the moment for words. But I can say it's a moment for action, and we will continue, security and defense forces, to do our job here.
Speaking on behalf of the bereaved families and the population of Kumba, the city mayor, Greg Mwano, saluted government's continuous effort in consoling the bereaved families.
We are very happy, and I want to say in their name, in their respective opinions, we are thanking you.
At the end of the one-day visit, Minister Joseph Beti-Asomo leaves Kumba feeling confident that the security situation is under control, but needs to be reinforced.
In our talking point tonight, we zoom in on the legal provision relating to incompatibilities, obligation of residency and automatic secondment of state employees who were elected as council executives over 8 months after the election of municipal authorities in the country. The law, which is expected to push through the decentralization process, is yet to be respected. Constantine Baum in the following report looks at the reasons for such a disdain of the law.
The General Code of Regional and Local Authorities enacted on 24 December 2019 requires the mayors and their deputies to serve and be committed to their functions by devoting their time to the full exercise of their mandate.
The provision of Section 143 of the General Code on Regional and Local Authorities, that they have the obligation to consecrate themselves to the service that were vested upon them.
Some mayors still accumulate functions.
The lack of legal disposition which activate the repressive dimension to oblige those mayors to get away one of their activities. There is a kind of culture of egoism in our society.
The code gives a list of offices that are incompatible with the functions of mayor.
Minister delegate, Secretary of State, and so on. Member of Parliament, because you cannot have 2 mandates. Senior divisional officers and governors, and also their deputies.
Sociologists recommend that the provisions be enforceable.
It is important to build a legal framework that can impose some of our compatriots to choose.
The code is to help enhance sound, effective and responsible management of local authorities, which are the nursery of the nation's emergence.
On to politics, the national president of the People's Movement for Dialogue and Reconciliation, Professor Jean-Claude Chanda Tomé, has paid a courtesy call to the chairman of the Social Democratic Front, Ni John Frundi. During the exchange, the political leaders underscored the need to restore peace in the crisis-stricken regions and for the political class to work in synergy for the development of the nation. Ni John Frundi used the occasion to announce his availability to take part in talks that will resolve the socio-political upheavals in the northwest and southwest regions. And on to other news. Hundreds of youth in the far north region have benefited from funds from the Special Youth Trainer Plan intended to ease their socio-economic insertion. The Minister of Youth Affairs and Civic Education, Monuna Futsu, was in Meme, where he distributed material for their small ventures and development projects. Henry Tato Ekambi reports.
Going through training, the hundreds of beneficiary youths in the far north proposed projects in the domains of agriculture, crafts, the digital economy, amongst others, but were awaiting finances. The Ministry of Youth Affairs and Civic Education, in a bid to speed up the 3-year Special Youth Plan, allocated funds which were offered to them through installation materials and checks.
We want to put our project in place like a restaurant. I want to thank the government.
The Minister of Youth Affairs, who handed over the installation materials in Kmer, in the Mayo Sava, a division that has been hardly hit by the Boko Haram sect.
The young people are now open and ready to seize all those opportunities. Their eyes are open and they know that this region is a rich region.
Moral, civic and entrepreneurial rearmament kits were also handed to officials of decentralized youth services to monitor the young beneficiaries.
In economic news, a 5-day conclave on the implementation of the restructuring process of the regional economic communities of Central Africa is underway in Yaoundé. During the meeting chaired by Charles Assamba, the experts from 11 countries in Central Africa, ACAS and CEMAC institutions worked on the fusion of the bodies for better economic results. Caroline Okier-Anoma has the details.
The stake of this video conference meeting under the chairmanship of Charles Assamba Ongono, leading expert of the steering committee, is to examine and validate the draft relevant documents concerning the rationalization of the two economic regional institutions, CEMAC and ACAS.
If we are not efficient, we cannot go upon that free zone. We cannot be efficient, we cannot be competitive. So we have now to merge and to constitute, to have a sort of unique block, and we have to bring alongside us those countries that are competitive, such as Rwanda, Democratic Republic of Congo, Angola.
Other aspects that will be examined are the draft institutional frameworks of ACAS and CEMAC, the unification of the free trade zone of both institutions, the elaboration of new instruments of commercial cooperation, such as common external tariffs, custom codes, and a common commercial policy for the 11 countries of CEMAC and ACAS. Afterwards, the ministers and high officials of the two institutions will have to validate it before forwarding it to the heads of states under the leadership of President Paul Biya, who will decide the outcome of the merging as from 2023.
The importance of statistical information systems in the dissemination of data that is useful to communities is being highlighted in Yaoundé. The forum is a 3-day capacity building workshop chaired by the Secretary General of the Ministry of Communication, Professor Felix Zogo. Joyce Tata tells us more.
Authorities at the Ministry of Communication voice out an urgent need for an up-to-date system of information in order to take appropriate decisions. Hence, such a come together at this point in time.
Our sector is new in our landscape, and the government need to know what are the human resources in quality, in quantity, which are dealing in this sector. The government have to know the investment will exist in this sector. Without knowing it, it's not possible to elaborate public policies with success.
The workshop launches the 9th-stage level of this vision to give a new face to the Department of Statistics at the Ministry. Every 2 years, an annual statistic document of the communication sector will be produced, and so having the competent staff for its fruition is a necessity.
From communication to culture, the achievements of Cameroon filmmakers recorded at the Crown Noir Film Festival that just ended in Yaoundé have been hailed by the Minister of Arts and Culture. Meeting with members of the Fisherman's Diary recognized as best film for 2020, Minister Bedounkpat saluted their commitment in spite of the global health crisis. Gerard Nanji Eyambe tells us more.
The Fisherman's Diary of Enna John Scott has been celebrated as the best film for 2020. While receiving in audience the crew members, the Minister of Arts and Culture, Dr. Bedounkpat, encouraged them to do even more in spite of limited production resources.
All this while, we've just been doing cinema out of passion for the minister to at least encourage us and tell us he's strongly behind the Cameroon cinema. I think those are beautiful words that every filmmaker would love to hear.
Before the just ended a Crown Noir Film Festival, the Fisherman's Diary had won 27 international awards with numerous nominations. The occasion was an opportunity for the celebration of excellence, fraternity in cinematography in Cameroon.
The wearing of face masks in public places will be mandatory until further notice.
In COVID-19 news, Cameroon currently counts over 500 active cases of the coronavirus. This as countries the world over are experiencing a second wave of infections. For the state of Cameroon, the intention is to completely stall the spread, and this can be achieved only through the strict respect of the prescribed preventive measures. Baldwin Sama and his guest, Dr. Joseph Okam, are at the Public Health Emergency Operations Center with more. Hello, Baldwin.
Good evening to you, Esther Kmer. I should say it's the laissez-faire attitude on the part of Cameroonians that may certainly lead us into the second wave for the spread of the coronavirus in Cameroon, given that so far in the country, as of tonight, the latest statistics we have is that 22,421 Cameroonians have been infected with the coronavirus since March this year, and we have had 443 Cameroonians who have so far died of COVID-19 in the country, with 21,510 Cameroonians who have recovered from the virus, and we have a recovery rate that stands at 96%. How possible is it, I'm talking about Cameroon, to move over to a second wave, talking about the spread of the coronavirus in Cameroon? We talk about that with our guest, Dr. Joseph Okam. He is a virologist. Good evening to you, Doctor.
Good evening, buddy.
Can Cameroon be spared from a possibility of having a second wave for this virus in the country?
Effectively, the situation is very alarming at the moment because with the reopening of borders and returns back to school, same as in Cameroon and in other countries, now we are seeing new cases of COVID-19, even among people who were initially infected. So with the non-respect of barrier measures that we are seeing actually in the community, people no more use their face masks. There is really a need to be afraid of a second wave.
You are a virologist. You just got the statistics I just announced a while ago with a 96% recovery. It is not that we are showing so far. What are some of these specificities that may lead us to this second wave of the virus?
Yes, from what we are seeing in our cohort of patients that we have tested so far, in August and September we had just 5% positivity rate, but in September we already had 8%. In October, we also moved around 9%, and now just for the first week of November, we are already around 10% positivity rate. And within this first week of November, we already have about 320 positive cases and 4 deaths. So we are really going towards a second wave, so there is a need to really keep talking to people to make sure everybody should go back to the habit of wearing their face masks, such that we should be able to slow down the epidemic in our context.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joseph Fukam. You are a virologist. The take-home message from here is that we must continue respecting all these barrier measures in order to avoid a possibility where our country will embrace a second wave of the coronavirus. Back to you, Esther Kmer.
Thanks very much. But in summer, isn't the barrier measures will definitely be a fatality for all Cameroonians, and no one will be safe. In other news, newly commissioned personnel at the Ministry of Basic Education have been challenged to keep working hard for the ministry to achieve its objectives. The call was made today in Yaoundé by the Minister of Basic Education, Professor Laurent-Serge Etoningwa, while installing the newly appointed into their functions. Romeo Kenyi was there on our reports for the 7:30 News.
Among the newly appointed personnel at the Ministry of Basic Education are directors, sub-directors and pedagogic inspectors. Commissioning them into function, the minister, Professor Laurent-Serge Etoningwa, has told them to be assiduous at work in order to overcome challenges ahead.
We want to continue to advise them to work hard and to realize that they are there because they have to serve the public.
Head of Services and Chargé d'Etudes have as mission to propose innovative ideas for the growth of the educational sector.
They need to give up themselves to work because the President of the Republic has given us an assignment for the ministry. We have a roadmap in the ministry which we have to accomplish, and we cannot accomplish this without having seasoned, well-disciplined and open staff to work with.
They were appointed last October 7.
The White Book of the Cameroon Employers Association, GCAM, has been presented to the Minister of Labour and Social Security, Gregoire Owona. GCAM's President, Celestin Tawamba, in the audience outlined that the publication is intended to shield the effects of the coronavirus pandemic on businesses and to increase on the productivity of workers. Mr. Tawamba Celestin was accompanied at the audience by 5 other members of the association. Elsewhere, internally displaced pupils and students from the Northwest and Southwest regions, now resident in Bangu in the West region, have received didactic material. The benefactor is the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Theodore Dato, who encouraged them to continue working hard and to feel at home in Bangu. Charles Ebone has more.
These are the school material, including exercise books, distributed to internally displaced students found in the Bangu subdivision, Upper Plateau division of the West region of the country.
We have to help those children go to school without problem.
It is a gift from the Honorable Member of Parliament, the Vice President of the National Assembly, within the framework of the 38 years of President Paul Biya's anniversary to the Supreme Magistrate of the state.
The President of the Assembly have given to us in Bangu, so he welcomed my children from Norway and Southwest. I'll be very happy.
Receiving the gifts from the Honorable Member of Parliament, the students thanked the MP for making education a priority for them.
Thank you, Papa. The things that you have given me will help me to school.
Honorable Theodore Dato states that education is key for all Cameroonian students despite the challenges in the Northwest and Southwest regions of the country.
And now on to sports. The Indomitable Lions of Cameroon have held their first training session today ahead of the qualifiers of the 2022 African Cup of Nations. The team will be playing against Mozambique this Thursday, and before the encounter, head coach Antonio Conceição is hopeful that there will be a full squad to ensure victory. Jules Ndema reports from Douala.
With confidence, part of Team Cameroon, made up of 7 players and staff, arriving the Annex Reunification Stadium in Douala in the presence of media men and women, Zambo Anguissa, Vincent Aboubakar, Fabrice Ondoa, and the rest of the players having their first training session ahead of the awaited game against Mozambique. Under head coach Antonio Conceição's supervision, the training session includes warm-up, skill and fitness activities, among others. players. After a collective training session, goalkeepers Simon Omosola and Fabrice Ondoa joined Jacques Songo Metasoué for specific trainings. Serenity reigns supreme in the Bell. Unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, no football fan is allowed in the stadium, to the great disappointment of onlookers blocked outside. The rest of the players are expected to join the squad latest this evening, and the second training session programmed for Tuesday. Fans of the Lions are looking forward to see their team play over 22 years after their last game in Douala.
Cameroon is preempting the entry of the coronavirus in airports. All passengers are henceforth subjected to a mandatory screening upon arrival, regardless of a COVID-19 negative certificate. On tonight's edition of the 7:30 News, you have the safety latch and other measures put in place to beat the coronavirus in the country and to avoid a second wave of infections. More news comes up at 8:30 p.m. with Adam Bala. Our programs continue on the CRTV. It was a pleasure serving you tonight. Good evening. I'll be back again tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. God willing. Good night.
In this connection, we should avoid stigmatizing.
Sheriff bailiffs have over the years contributed immensely to the administration of justice in Cameroon as officers of the courts. Created in